I speak to you in the name of the one holy and living God. Well, this morning, our Christian's Testament, beautifully offered by Mick, invites us into a season of grace and gratitude. And even if we are not yet in the habit of intentionally practicing gratitude, underline yet because I'm sure we all are excited to respond to Mick's invitation, most of us can define gratitude. We understand gratitude as our appreciative response to kindness, to benefit, to grace that flows to us. And you see, gratitude has two parts: the recognition of the benefit of the blessing and our appreciative response. Oh, Mary, you created such a beautiful event. It was such a wonderful gathering and inspiring so many of us, inspiring us to go out and to offer similar opportunities to others. Thank you. Gratitude. But when it comes to the matter of grace, we might find it a little bit more challenging to define. We might find it more challenging to define because grace has meaning that far exceeds the secular understanding of good manners, elegant movements, and poise. Grace, in the Christian tradition, means more than a deferment of time, a grace period, or more than the address of nobility. Oh, good morning, Your Grace. In religious parlance, grace refers to divine favor in relationship with humankind. So we understand grace as God giving God's self to us so that we will embody that grace, that goodness, and extend it to others. Which means grace is dynamic. It is not a thing. It is not a gift. Oh, I thank God I have the gift of brown hair, or the gift of being short, or the gift of a good medical plan. That's not grace. Grace is movement, emergence. It is the becoming of divinity in and of, with and through each and every one of us. If not through us, how will grace be revealed? You see, we are meant to participate in the dance of humanity with divinity, and as with every pair of dance partners, we collaborate, we cooperate, we reciprocate. And so the divine spark that inhabits, that is the very core of our being, moves us as grace, inviting us to dance. And hear that, it's an invitation because we can choose. We get to choose whether or not to accept that invitation. And when we say yes, I'd like to dance, grace flows to us and through us. And we dance. Now, were we to get theological about this, this is how we participate in the Trinity. So you're probably crossing your eyes and saying, well, could we start with what exactly is the Trinity? Well, I will spare you the hours and days and weeks and years of theological discourse and just say this. God forgive me. Trinity is mutual indwelling aspects of God. God, transcendent, invisible, the great mystery. God incarnate, visible as revealed in Jesus. God, the perichoretic dance of the Spirit, which is the movement of grace that binds it all together. And it is into this movement, into this dance of grace that we humans are invited. We're invited to participate in divine life and extend that grace to others. Now, we all know that we can do nothing to earn or to deserve grace. Nevertheless, we are obliged, it is our obligation to respond to it. So how are we to respond to grace? We respond to grace by allowing the abundantly generative overflowing of divine grace to continue to flow through us for the benefit of others. Think of it as a dance between the effusion of God's grace and our grace-filled response, grace upon grace upon grace, overflowing in a dance for the good of all of creation. Who doesn't want to be part of that dance? And so turning to our Hebrew and our gospel text this morning, I believe this dance of grace, this very dance, is the covenant relationship about which both Moses and Jesus are preaching. The covenant relationship between humanity and divinity. So first Moses, what does he do? He summarizes the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments. And just one chapter before the verses in the Hebrew Testament we heard today, we meet the people of God on the mountain, and out of the fire they receive these 10 Commandments. And if we wait another, 13 to 1600 years, just a while, we hear Jesus quoting Moses. Hear, O Israel, listen, people. The Lord, our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. So again, Jesus summarizes the first 5 of those 10 commandments. But then he goes on, and he recaps the second 5. And he adds, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. These are the covenant. This is the covenant between humanity and divinity. This defines our relationships with God and one another. It constitutes a bilateral covenant that describes how us humans are meant to order our lives in relationship with God and in relationship with each other. So rather than being a list of legalistic imperatives, the commandments essentially give us the dance steps that we need. The dance steps to advance our exchange of grace for grace. This exchange of grace is in a mutuality of affection in our relationships with God and each other. This is how we are meant to live and to breathe and to find our meaning in this beautiful, reciprocating dance of grace. Does anyone here not want to be part of that dance? Well, by now you might be wondering, what does this rather exhausting exposition on grace have to do with gratitude? Well, as I mentioned earlier, gratitude has 2 parts. It's the recognition of the benefit or the grace that is flowing to us, and it is our appreciative response, our grace-filled response. So the practice of noticing, recording in a journal, kindness, comfort, help, assistance, advantage, profit, or the goodness that is flowing to us really opens the way, opens our minds and our hearts to respond appreciatively, to respond with grace. And that's what it is. Our appreciative response is allowing that grace to continue to flow through us. Consider it this way. You are a beautifully fashioned ceramic vessel, and you're filled with living water. But being preoccupied with the shape of your vessel, oh, it's a little too long and narrow, or maybe a little too wide or lumpy, you fail to notice that living water inside. And failing to notice the living water inside, we neglect to open the spout and allow that living water to pour out, which means our neighbor's thirst is never quenched. And eventually that water becomes stagnant and evaporates. You see, if we fail to notice the grace, the living water inside, there's little chance that it will continue to flow to us and through us. But when we make it a practice to pause and to notice, when we write down and reflect on the grace as it shows up in its array of costumes and the countless kinds of dances, naturally, we respond with gratitude, passing that grace on to others. You see, because grace, like water, intends to flow to us and through us. And it does so by our deliberate choice to respond with gratitude. Describing the covenant relationship between humanity and divinity, between God and all of us, Moses and Jesus are preaching good news. And this is good news because being in covenant with God and our neighbors elevates our relationships, our encounters. It raises them up from being issues of separation and division, disjointedness, and sparring over things and competing, if not outright warring about entitlement, rights, and responsibilities. Being in covenant relationship with God and each other elevates us to a mutually generative, creative collaborations. This grace-filled dance, wherein fulfilling our obligations to one another is no longer a burden, but the outward and visible expression of our gratitude for the unearned grace poured to us and through us. Dear people of God, welcome to a season of grace and gratitude. Shall we dance? Amen.